What I'm about to share with you, you may not like, but it's the truth and the facts when it comes to investing, buying anything real estate, especially buying land. You see, there are obvious warning signs when it comes to buying real estate. Well, obvious to some, but not so obvious to others. So what I'm going to share with you is what you can do and what you cannot do when it comes to selecting, buying, and closing, and picking, and purchasing a piece of real estate. But rest assured, the information that I will share with you will save you a whole lot of headaches, a whole lot of stress, and prevent you from making a huge mistake when it comes to buying land. So grab a pen and a piece of paper. You're going to want to take notes. Now, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to my channel. My name is Wayne Turner. For nearly 30 years, I've done just about everything real estate, from buying, flipping, selling, you name it, we've done it. And look, the reason why I share that with you is so you can have the comfort knowing that the information that I share and what you learn comes from actual decades of experience. This isn't textbook stuff. Now, making a large purchase like buying a piece of land can be very emotional. And here's what I mean by that. Whenever you purchase that piece of land, it's going to have a huge part in your personal life. And this is why the number one thing that you never want to do when it comes to buying a piece of land, and look, write this down, it's becoming emotionally attached to the property before you take ownership to the property. When you become real emotionally attached to that property before you buy it, that's when things get overlooked and mistakes happen. Now look, you can prevent all these mistakes by simply making a plan, writing down exactly what you're going to do, and taking notes on these videos. This is free information. I don't charge anybody for any of this information. I just love helping so people don't make the same mistakes that I've seen countless people make over the years, and I too have made those mistakes. When you have a system and a plan and a process and you write these things down, you know exactly what to look for, what to do, what not to do, so you just quite simply don't make the mistakes, because the simplest of mistake can cost you thousands of dollars, and you don't want to live with that regret. Now, once you've made your list, perhaps you're going to build a house, you want to build your dream home, perhaps you want to subdivide the land, maybe you want to put a double wide or a single wide modular home on the property. Irregardless, you want to have a system and a plan and a process in place, because you want to make sure whatever it is that you want to do to that property, you can do to that property. Yes, there's things called restrictive covenants and deed restrictions to a property, and you would think, well, I buy a piece of property, I can do anything I want with that. That's not the case. You could buy a piece of property, and if they say you can't do it, you can't do it. I know it sounds crazy. It's your land, right? I feel the same way. But here's the deal. If somebody sells you a piece of land and they say that you cannot put a double wide or a single wide modular home on that property, technically you're not supposed to do that. Now you can, but you risk of people filing a petition in your area, the previous owner filing a petition against you, and basically getting you a court order to cease and desist any work that's being done on the property. Now, how you get around all this is all this information is public record. You can pull it at the Register of Deeds office in your city, county, parish courts. They will have all that information. It's recorded and it's public record. So any property that you look at to purchase, go and get all of that information on that property. Now listen, you can still make an offer to purchase any property, but you have to put what I'm telling you in the contract. It's called a contingency. That means that you're telling the seller, I can buy your land with the exception of I need to approve the deed restrictions. I need to make sure it's in a proper flood zone or not in a flood zone. I need to make sure there's no back taxes, liens, encumbrances. I need to make sure there's a clear title. All of this stuff I'm about to share with you. That's why I say write this down, because you want to reference back to it. Now look, here's a great idea, and you probably already thought about this. Wayne, I want to buy a piece of land and I want to build a custom home. I want to build my own home. And that's a big dream for a lot of people. It's a fun, wonderful thing to do. It's great experience. And listen, I tell people, what you will learn, my mom always told me, no one will ever take it away from you. That's knowledge, it's wisdom. But you have to know this. If you're going to buy, for example, a double wide modular home and place it on the property, or if you're thinking, Wayne, I want to pay cash, and all I have are the funds to purchase a single wide modular home, I want to steer you against that. And here's the reason why. If you put a single wide modular home on that property and you decide you want to sell that property, and listen, I'm always thinking resale. You have to always think resale, because you never know how life's going to unfold. You're going to move on to something next, better, whatever it may be. But if you put a single wide modular home on your property and you want to sell that home that you put on there with the property, the buyer can't get a traditional mortgage. You can't go to just the average bank or a hometown bank or a mortgage company and say, hey, I want to get a loan to purchase this modular home that's a single wide. Now, if it's a double wide and it's put on a permanent foundation, you can, in fact, get a traditional mortgage. You can get an FHA loan on that property. And listen, I always tell people this because Prices of things are fueled by supply and demand. If it's in demand, but yet they can't get financing, then you're kind of locked. And if you can't get financing, then you're not going to acquire as much money for that property when you go to sell it. So you see, when in doubt, put a double wide, very bare minimum, the smallest double wide you can put on the property, because there's no square footage requirements. You can put a small double wide modular home, put that on a permanent foundation if you choose to live in that and not build a house, and then you can get an FHA loan on that property, even yourself or when you go to sell it. Now here's an idea and here's an option. What you can do is put a single wide modular home on the property and live in that while you build your house. I've had people literally to purchase a motorhome, if you will, and live in a motorhome while they take the next 4 to 6 months of their life to build their dream home. There's more than one way to skin a cat, so to speak. So you just have to be creative and make sure that there's no crazy stipulations in the deed restrictions that say you can't do such a thing. Unfortunately, they're out there. Restrictions, I know, yeah. Now, one of the really important contingencies, and I've seen people miss this, and you don't want to make this mistake, is you want to make sure that the property perks. You've heard me talk about that. They have to do what they call a percolation test. The city, the county, the parish, they'll come out, they'll drill holes, they'll make sure that that land, in fact, will absorb water. It will absorb what they call the black water, the septic water that comes, from your drain lines and drain system, right? It has to perk, but here's the deal. It can't just perk. It has to perk specific for your house plans. So if you want to build a 4-bedroom house and they tell you that that land perked, it's good, you need to make sure you see the actual copy that says it perks for a 4-bedroom. Because if it does not perk for a 4-bedroom, it only perks for a 3-bedroom, you're going to have a lot of headache on your hands, and it's going to cost you a lot of money to get an upgraded system just to make sure you can put a 4-bedroom house. They won't give you a permit to build a house if it only perks for a 3-bedroom and you want to build a 4. So before I forget, if you like this video or any of the videos that we've done, give us a like, a thumbs up, if you will. That lets me know that what we're producing and putting out there is good information and you like it, and we'll continue to put this information out there for you. Now look, there's such little things that can be so easily made, and they're mistakes that can cost you so much money and headache and stress. And it all starts with purchasing a piece of property and not using the proper contract. Like when real estate brokerages and brokerage firms, they have to use state mandated contracts now. They're typically 10 to 12 pages long. That's all fine and good because a lot of these contingencies that I share with you are in the contract. Not all of them, not all the time. That's why you got to have a list. But if you just go to an individual and say, I want to buy the piece of property you've got for sale, and you write up a contract that you purchase or download or find online for free, they're not going to have all the contingencies that help you look out for your best interest when it comes to purchasing that property. And that's why I say make a list, make notes, make sure it's all in there, because the last thing you want to do is miss something and it costs you thousands of dollars and lots of stress. Now, when it comes to selecting that property, looking at that property, real estate brokerage firms are going to have full access to all that land, but you can still see just about everything that's available for sale on like Zillow and Realtor.com and all those sites. But oftentimes, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. You got to look out for the warning signs of a property that's priced too low, right? But it's not always the case. And here's the reason why. When people sell property, it's an emotional sale, just like it's an emotional buy. And when you're selling a property and you're going through a divorce or there's been a death, there's less emotional attachment to that property. So when there's less emotional attachment to that property, oftentimes the owner of the property, they're eager to sell it and eager to sell it quick. So don't overrule or rule out a piece of property that you feel like, that's too good to be true. Why are they selling it so cheap? The most important question that you can ask of a owner selling a property is this, real simple. Why are you selling? Find out why they are selling, because that will tell you their motivation to sell the property every time. And look, whether or not you find out that information, whether or not they're truthful in giving you the information of why they're selling the property, irregardless, don't be afraid to make an offer on the property. The answer is always no unless you ask. And oftentimes you feel like, well, I don't want to make an offer because I don't want to make anybody mad or I don't want to insult anybody's intelligence. But at the end of the day, I always tell homeowners and property owners, what about all the people that looked at it that never made an offer? At least these people like your property and your land enough to make you an offer for the property. They don't know, you don't know what they're willing to take, so make an offer. Don't be afraid to make an offer. Now, if you make an offer on a piece of property, one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is not getting a title policy on the property. Title to a property lets you basically know who has control, what you can and can't do to the property. Properties, lands, houses, you name it. If it's a piece of earth, somebody owns it. It doesn't matter if it's a commercial dwelling or whatever it may be. They all have a deed and they have a title. And when they have a deed and a title, the deed shows who owns it. But the title is the actual legal instrument that says what you can and can't do to the property. And that's why I say you want to get a title policy. It's an insurance policy on the title of the property. The title company researches and makes sure that there's no back taxes, liens, encumbrances, or clouds, mechanical liens on the title. And when they issue you a clear title, they also can issue a title policy. It's a one-time payment premium that you pay at closing. You don't pay it ever again, and it covers the property for the entire ownership, the entire time that you own the property. So if you learn anything from me, Wayne Turner, never buy anything without a title policy. And no, I don't own a title company. No, I don't own a mortgage company or anything like that. I'm just giving you helpful information. So listen, when it comes to selecting the property, picking out a property that you want to purchase, it's important to follow the trees. And what I mean by that is you got to follow those cedar trees and those birch trees. You see, whenever you see lots of cedar trees and lots of birch trees, more than likely there's a lot of rocky soil. There's a lot of rock on that land because those trees can literally grow on a flat rock. If you want to see it for yourself, just go riding up the interstate and look at the trees that are literally growing out of the rocks. 90% of the time, they're cedar trees. Now, look, there's nothing wrong with that. I love the smell of cedar, cedar burning, cedar. I've built furniture with cedar. I love cedar. But here's the deal. If there's a lot of rock in that soil, it's going to be harder for it to perk. You heard me talk about that. And it's going to be harder to get a well dug on that property. If you're on city water and you can connect to city water, that's fine and dandy, no trouble. But you just have to know that if there's a lot of rock in that soil, then it's going to take you a whole lot more money to get that property to perk, and it's going to take you a whole lot more money to actually build a well because you're going to have to go real deep into the ground to hit water. Now, you heard me talk about flood zones. You also want to follow the water. Now, there's nothing wrong with a creek and a pond and a lake and all that stuff, but you have to make sure that the property is not in some crazy flood zone. And the flood zones are A, B, C, and X for the most part, right? A being the most extensive, meaning that the property's in a 100-year floodplain. That's all fine and good. There's nothing wrong with buying a piece of property in a flood zone. The whole entire property may not be in a flood zone, but a quick way to tell if a property is subjected to flooding is quite simple. Drive around and see if there's any homes this high off the ground or higher. That's a good indication that that house is built above what they call a base elevation flood stage, and they have to build it up that way in order to prevent the insurance from being astronomically high. Now, don't get me wrong, that's not always the case. One of my pet peeves people hear me just kind of gripe about is when you go into an area and it's in a flood zone that's A or B, and they built the house 30, 40 years ago, and it's on a slab of concrete, and the house is flooded 3 times. I, for the life of me, don't understand that, because that land has been in a flood zone for damn near 100 years, and yet they'll still issue a permit, and a builder will build that house in a flood-prone area. Just doesn't make sense. Now, when you're looking for a piece of property, you want to look for days on the market. How long has the property been on the market? The ones that are the don't wanters, that's the term that people use, we use in this industry, in the business of real estate, is the don't wanters. Oftentimes, though, you'll see where the property's been on the market just for 30 to 40 days. But if you've got an agent that's working with you, that's representing you in the transaction, they can see the data from when it was previously listed. Perhaps it was listed for 6 months, 8 months, or a year. Quick story, I was just looking at a couple of properties today. One showed 53 days on the market, another one showed 2 days on the market. Well, that was 2 days with the new agent and 53 days with the new agent, but they'd been on the market for months. One was on the market for almost a year. And so oftentimes that's kind of where the gold is, because keep in mind, Put yourself in the seller's position. If you put a property on the market and it's been on the market for a year, that sucker's almost had a birthday being on the market, you're ready to get rid of it. You're a little bit more motivated. And oftentimes the price that's on the property, the seller will take substantially less than what they're asking. And that's why you always hear me say, don't be afraid to make an offer. The answer is always no unless you ask. The only way to get the answer and to know what they're willing to sell you the property for is to quite simply make them an offer. And listen, don't do the verbal stuff. It's not gonna have as much impact as if you write up an offer to purchase with an approval letter or showing that you have the cash funds to close the property. That will show the seller the seriousness that you have to purchase their property. So when it comes to looking for property and you find a property that just hit the market and you make an offer on that property and they don't accept your offer, but you feel like that's fair market value for the property, you look at the numbers. Because listen, buyers like yourself, me, everyone, we're more educated now than we've ever been. We have everything at our disposal. We can pull and see all of this information. We don't have to go to the courthouse or court records or any of that anymore. It's right there on the computer. So we know if a property's fair market value or overpriced. And oftentimes when it's overpriced, but you really like the property, make an offer, right? You don't know what the seller's willing to take for the property. Answer is no unless you ask, right? So you make an offer on the property and they decline your offer, reject your offer, or make you a counter offer that you feel is not fair for the property. You need to do this. Don't forget about the property. Keep your eye on that property. Because I tell sellers all the time, your first offer is typically your best offer. I can't tell you the countless stories where I've sold properties, represented people, brokered the sale of properties for people. We get an offer, the first offer, it's a decent offer, but it's less than what they want to make on the property. So they decline that offer and their home sits on the market for 3, 6, 9 months, even a year, and don't sell. So if you don't mind, give me a thumbs up if you like these videos. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like them, you leave me a comment. You tell me what you want to hear more about real estate. I will continue to produce these videos for you.